above and dabbled in blood-red heath. The red-ribbed ledges drip with a silent horror of blood, and echo there, whatever is asked her, answer for death. For there in the ghastly pit, long since a body was found, his who had given me life, O Father, O God, was it well? Mangled and flattered and crushed, and disted into the ground. There yet lies a rock and flowered down. Did he fling himself down from earth? For vastness, speculation had failed. And ever he muttered and maddened, and ever whined with despair. And out he walked when the wind like a broken whirlwind wailed. The flying gold of the ruined woodlands drove through the air. I remember the times when the roots of my hair were stirred by a shuffled step, by a dead weight trailed, by whispered fright. And my pulses closed their gates with a shock on my heart as I heard the shrill-edged shriek of mother barred the shallow eyes. Villainy somewhere, whose? One says we are villains all. Not he. His honest fame should at least by me be maintained. Oh, that old man, now lord of the broad estate and hall, dropped off gorged from the scheme that had left us flaccid and drained. Why do they prate of the blessings of peace? We have made them a curse, pickpockets, each hand lusting for all that is not its own. And lust of gain, the spirit of Cain, is it better or worse? In the heart of the system is in the war as in a milestone. But these are the days of advance, the works of the level mind, when who was full with the faith and the tradesman's wear of the word. Is it peace or war? Civil war, as I think, and that of a kind of fire, as underhand, not openly bearing the sword. Sooner or later, I too may passively take the print of the golden age. Why not? I have neither hope nor trust. They make my heart as a millstone, set my face as a flint. Cheat and be cheated, and die. Who knows? We are ashes and dust. Peace sitting under her olive, slurring when days go by. When the poor are hobbled and hustled together, each sex like swine, when only the ledger lives, and when only not all men lie. Peace in her vineyard, yes, to company forges the wine. And the vitriol madness flushes up in the ruffian's head, till the filthy bylane rings to the yell of the trumpet wife, and chalk and alum and plaster are sold to the poor for bread, and the spirit of murder works in the very means of life. And sleep must lie down armed, for the villainous sentiments brine with wakeful ear in the hush of moonless nights, while another is cheating, sick of a few last gasps, as he sits to pestle and poison behind his crimson lights. When a Mammonite mother kills her baby for burying thief, and Timon Mammon grins on a pile of children's bones, is it peace or war? Better, war, loud war by land and by sea, war with 1,000 battles and shaking of 100 thrones. For I trusted an enemy's feet came yonder round by the hill, and the rushing battle bolts sang from the 3-decker out of the foam, that the smooth-faced, snub-nosed rogue would leap from his counter until, and strike if he could, where above his cheating yard at home. What, am I raging alone as my father raged in his mood? Must I too creep to the hollow and dash myself down and die, rather than hold by the laws I made, never more to bruise on the horror of shattered limbs and wretched swindlers lie? Would there be sorrow for me? There was love in the passionate shriek, love for the silent finger in soft haste to the grave. Wrapped in a cloak as I saw him, and thought he would rise and speak, and rave with the lie and the liar, our God, as he used to rave. I am sick of the hall and the hill. I am sick of the moor and the main. Why should I stay? Can a sweeter chance ever come to me here? Oh, having the nerves of motion as well as the nerves of pain, were it not wise if I fled from the place and pit and fear? Workmen up at the wall, they are coming back from abroad. The dark old place will be gilt by the touch of a millionaire. I have heard, I know not whence, of the singular beauty of Maud. I played with the girl and child. She promised there, to be fair. Maud with adventurous climbings and tumbles and childish escapes. Maud with the light of the village, the ring of joy of all. Maud with her sweet purse mouth, where my father doned with grapes. Maud, the beloved of my mother, who moved its garlic before. What is she now? My dreams are bad. She may bring me a curse. No, there is fatter game on Maud. She will let me alone. Thanks, for the fiend best knows whether woman and man are the worst. I will bury myself in myself, and the devil may fight to his own.
Those are the opening stanzas of Tennyson's Maud, published in 1855, and the first major poem that he wrote since becoming a poet laureate. I think it's reasonable to assume that those lines were not what the Victorian audience was expecting from their poet laureate. Victorian critics, certainly at the time, were unsure what to make of the misanthropic and disturbed speaker of those lines. And they were unsure to what extent his frame of mind, his psychological perspective, the barely repressed sexuality, the distaste for capitalism, the advocacy of war as a cure for social ill. They were unsure to what extent those opinions were Tennyson's individual. This is a dramatic poem. Tennyson called it a monodrama. The speaker is clearly not the lyric I of the poet himself, but some of the speaker's opinions and attitudes have links that can be traced back to events and influences in Tennyson's life. For example, the representation of madness in this poem is very heavily influenced by Tennyson's friendship with a man called Matthew Allen, who was an asylum owner and a theorist of madness. He wrote an essay on the classification of the insane in 1837. And one of Allen's ideas was that individual madness was closely linked to a social breakdown, which he saw as characteristic of modernity. I just want to read something from Matthew Allen's essay on the state of British society. It is not bound together by that order and sympathy which should exist, but on the contrary, discord and disseverance prevail to an extent which seems to threaten its decomposition and destruction. But too many individuals are intoxicated with the fury of their various passions and inordinate desires, and mad with the endless anxieties and reverses they produce. One part of society, as well as one part of the mind, is at war with another. And this idea of a society and mind at war with itself, I think, comes out very strongly in those lines that Lily just read. Another important influence on those lines was the spasmodic poetry, which was very popular for a very brief time in the early 1850s in Britain. Nobody reads spasmodic poetry. Very few people have even heard of it. But it was a real literary fact in the years running up to Tennyson's writing Maud. And it was called spasmodic poetry. It was given that name because it tended to focus on disturbed, misanthropic speakers like the speaker of Maud. And the language of this poetry tended to be very, very visceral and physical. So there's lots of beating hearts and throbbing brains and tingling nerves in spasmodic poetry. And you see that in some of the language in Tennyson's poem as well. My pulses close their gates with a shock on my heart. And that's a very spasmodic line. And Tennyson's really taking on the influence of this literary movement in this poem. One of the other typical features of spasmodic poetry is its formal experimentation. These poets tended to change around, switch up their forms in order to reflect the changing psyches of their speakers. And you see this throughout Maud as well. The lines that Lily just read are, in some ways, very conventional form. They have an established meter, a set rhyme scheme, but it's sort of a form which is being taken to its limit, in a way. The long lines and the half rhymes suggest a form which is under pressure. It's as if the speaker is just barely controlling the violence that's going on inside his mind. And over the course of the poem, the form and the language changes to reflect the speaker's mental state. So during the first part of the poem, he falls in love with Maud, and his, the poetry changes.
Gathering woodland lilies, myriads float together. Birds and our wood sang, ringing through the valleys. All is here, in among the lilies. I kissed her slender hand, she took a kiss away. Maud is not 17, but she is tall and stately. I to cry out on pride, who have won her favour, and Maud were sure of heaven, if loneliness could save her. I know the way she went, home with her maiden posy. Her feet touched the meadows and left the daisies rosy. Birds in the highball garden were crying and calling to her. Where is Maud, Maud, Maud? One has come to woo her. Look, a horse at the door, and little Charlie snarling. Go back, my lord, the across the moor, you are her darling.
Very different poetry from the first extract that you read out, and I think that's the kind of poetry that Howard had in mind when he talked about Tennyson's pretty embroideries. Maud is not 17, she is tall and stately, sort of equal parts creepy and embarrassing. But I think this poetry is actually deliberately bad, because I think it's written by Tennyson to convey the speaker's state of mind at this point in the poem. And there are two ways of seeing this. One way is to read this passage of the poem as the speaker deluding himself. There's a whole way of reading this poem which suggests actually the speaker never really meets Maud, or doesn't know her, that this is all going on inside his head, that he's kidding himself, and this leads to this rather sort of cloying and sentimental verse. The other way of reading it is to say that this is one of the few moments in which the speaker is actually happy in the poem, and Tennyson wasn't very good at writing happy. And so again, sort of this sentimentality comes from the speaker's relatively positive state of mind at this point. Thankfully for fans of Tennyson such as myself, this doesn't last, and in the second part of the poem, the speaker's psychology starts to disintegrate, and the poetry becomes much more interesting again. The speaker kills Maud's brother in a duel, and then Maud dies of grief, sort of Victorian melodrama sensation. And the speaker is forced to flee after killing Maud's brother, and as I say, in the second part of the poem, his mind really starts to break down completely, and this leads to another shift in the verse. And